everyone, this is Jasmine from JazzDrawsArt here, and I am back with Inktober Week 2 2021. Prompt for this week, the first prompt was watch. Now, I know a lot of people drew like an actual watch or something like that, bird watching, things that were unique, and the thing that came to mind for me was movies. I love to watch movies, and sure, I could draw a whole scene where I draw like a TV and somebody sitting in the living room and all that, but I thought I'd take it back to more my childhood, which is watching movies on a VHS with a VCR and having the home recorded version as well. So it's all taped and everything, labeled yourself. And I decided to draw Hocus Pocus on VHS, home recorded. You know, it's one of those movies that is just feel good for the season of fall. It's its own thing. I grew up watching it. Of course, it's become extremely popular lately. I'm sure it was when it came out, but a lot of people I knew didn't really watch it or told me they knew it. So I grew up just watching this every Halloween with my family, and I still do every Halloween. I will have some candy or bake something and I will watch Hocus Pocus. Of course, now you can watch it on like Disney Plus or virtual stuff, but still, nonetheless, here it is. You can see my head poking through every once in a while because I'm really trying to get the lines straight here. I thought it'd be nice to do something just a little bit more simple so I can add just a bit more detail to it and draw more attention to the actual focus of the prompt. So I did the font the best I could and added a little black cat to the label. And I was kind of mad because when I was erasing, I did crinkle the paper a little bit. You can see it's not too bad, but when I scan it, I should be able to hopefully edit the wrinkle out. By the way, you guys, you can all see all my Inktober drawings and the progress and the full pictures on my social media, such as my Instagram and my Facebook. Those are linked in the description down below and on my channel. Alright, so I went in to this piece with a bunch of different grays and blacks and just trying to layer over it and layer over it so you could really get the shine of the glass on the VHS, and so you can also get kind of like a bit of the texture of the film. And I wanted to make sure that the shadows were in the right place. I didn't want to go full black for this one, and I didn't want to do like one of those full colored ones because I know that some VHSs, you know, you could have different colors like green or orange, but when it's just a home recorded one, it's usually generically like the black or gray ones. And so I went ahead, here I am filling in the cat, and I decided to fill in the font, the writing with yellow like the original poster does for this movie to make it a little bit more fun. And I'm going back in, adding some texture and trying to add some highlights and a bit more of a realistic reflective look on the film. Here you can see I'm adding just dashed and dotted lines here so you can get more of like that kind of bumpy texture on the surface of the VHS, because not all of them had them, but most of them did, and we still have a lot in my house, and so every once in a while, you know, you pull one out. It's nice to hold them in your hands again. And I just really had fun going through this and rendering it, not having too much of a care and stressing if it's perfect or not. Inktober is a marathon, not a sprint. So really just try and go about it the best you can. This is about improving and having fun. I added some lines like you would often see on the homemade labels you would add to a movie. And I thought, why not add some popcorn, which didn't work. So I drew just these little loose candy bits here, like a sucker, candy corn, and just a little twist candy, just for a little added bit of color and something for the background without doing a full background. And I decided that's where I would add my color and just keep it simple. Alright, day 2 was pressure. Yep. There were many different things I could have done for this. The first thought that came into my head was Under Pressure by Queen and Bowie. But I didn't really want to have to draw David Bowie and Freddie Mercury, because it felt like a lot of work to me. And so it would have been really hard to get their likeness right off the bat. It would have taken me a long time, but maybe someday I can do that one. But here I decided to go with my next instinct, which was tire pressure scene from one of the early SpongeBob episodes where SpongeBob and Squidward, not Patrick, go on a boat ride. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the pizza episode, but I could be wrong. I love SpongeBob. My family loves SpongeBob. It's just a staple in our house. And I kept it simple. I didn't shade it too much. I just let it be simple line work, and I might color it later. The next day was pick. I've seen some different ideas that were floating around, like a guitar pick, which I was really tempted by, but I feel like it didn't quite focus on the word pick enough for me, because I didn't want to draw just a guitar pick. I wanted to draw, probably someone playing the guitar, which would have taken a lot longer to come up with who I wanted, how I was going to present it, the composition, all of that. I thought about picking apples in an orchard, which was cool, and I liked that idea, but I saw this one picture when I was Googling orchards of a girl picking flowers in a sunflower field, and I kind of went with that and took bits and pieces from different photos I liked and ended up coming with this one. And this is probably one of the ones I have the most for a background, because I was just trying to fill it up with flowers. She's in a nice sundress in it, and she's kneeling down and picking a small little sunflower. I really like this idea. It took me quite a bit of time because I had sketched it out on a separate piece of paper, transferred it to this one, and then I had to go over all the lines again for a third time with a fine liner. That is a lot of work. Just in case you don't know, redrawing the same thing, it can be good the first time, maybe the second time would be better, but drawing it a third time, you have to really make sure that you don't pause for too long, because it'll bleed through the paper, leave a spot with the ink. But you gotta go slow enough that you get the lines where they're supposed to be without screwing up, because one little jerk and it's all over, guys. You can try to fix it, but it'll always look kind of off. So I decided I was going to tone it, so I just started with a really light flat base that I could get with the top for the sky, and went back in so I could have a little bit of a gradient with a bit darker. And I just started laying down my basic shadows, wanting to get the values where I wanted them to be so I could go over it with a bit darker, finding out where thicker lines would work and thinner lines would work to help play on the value and the way you'd bring the character more to a 3D state, just so they can pop off the page a little bit. You can see them a bit better. You can also tell who's the focus, what the focus of the illustration is going to be. And so you just want to make sure that you go through all of these kind of things when you're drawing. You have to make sure you keep track of the steps, because if you just do things willy-nilly, it can turn out really cool, or it can take something that was good and ruin it. I'm sure many artists out there have had their time where they're like, oh, I should color this or I should shade this, and that was when they ruined something they really liked and they were mad about it for a very long time. I've done that more times than I can count. So that's why I often, when I'm drawing traditionally, just prefer to do it with a pencil or something that I can erase, take back. But Inktober is not forgiving, so you have to just keep going with it. I'm doing my best to stick to just inks. I would like to try sometime to get more dip inks, like the kind that are different colors and everything, where you dip a brush or a dip pen into it. I'd like to play around with those kind of things sometime, especially because these markers I've had them for a few years now and they're starting to get a little bit dry, but sometimes that texture is cool and it can work, so I'm trying to use it to my advantage where I can. But it's hard to get a flat base when your markers are starting to get really dry, and these are alcohol based, so I have to see about replacing them. I've had these since college, so like 2017, 2018, and I've been using them a lot in my traditional work. especially when I'm doing my tone studies and swatches when I'm working on my comics and what I want to do for the layout. And here I'm just adding a few highlights with my white gel pen. I really love having a white gel pen. Yet again, another thing that can make or break your pieces. If you add too much of it, it can look very messy, and it does smudge. It does smudge, so you have to be very careful. Okay, the next day, the prompt was sour. I had considered taking the easy route and drawing like a citrus or something of the like a lemon or a lime, but I went against that. I could have drawn just a sour candy. I went against that. I wanted it to be a little bit different, a little bit more how uniquely I could interpret it for myself. And mind you, this is a very quick drawing because I had to get a few of these done in one day just so I could prep and get ready for this video and do other things in my life. So this drawing is of Markiplier using his utility shovel to eat Sour Patch Kids ice cream. If you have not seen his videos where he eats the different products of Sour Patch Kids and the different things they've sent him and the things he's tried, you really should look at them. They're such a funny, good time. I love them. And I love Markiplier, so I thought this would be a nice way to just have a little tribute to him in it. And I just did a very, very quick drawing of him. And I didn't want it to be too complicated because if I was trying to make this realistic, I would have spent way longer on this. But my time and resources were little, so I went with what I had. So you can see here I'm just doing like a basic little bit of shading, kept his hair a matte black, went through with a little bit deeper and deeper shades of gray each time, and just filled in his shirt a flatter, cool gray. I thought that adding color to the Sour Patch Kids container would show you the draw of focus so you could still tell what the prompt is supposed to be about, and I think it worked. It could have been a bit more focused, but I think it worked enough for this to serve its purpose. I decided to add a little orange circle around him for extra effect, to add a background and to make the picture have a bit more of a pop to it. Okay, moving on, the next day. This is probably my favorite drawing I did for this week. This prompt was called Stuck. There are many different ways you can interpret stuck, obviously, and I was thinking more of things that are sticky, stuck to you, stuck with. And I went with Venom. Venom on Eddie Brock. Not the new Venom movies with Tom Hardy, but I ended up doing a bit more kind of like the comics, kind of like the Tobey Maguire with Topher Grace, just because I love the way that it was crawling onto his face, so it's stuck to him, it's binding itself to him. I really love that idea. Nonetheless, whatever your opinion may be on this version of Venom, the Tobey Maguire movies have always been my favorites. I've loved Spider-Man because of those movies, so I feel really close to them, and still, I do think that, like this photo, the reference for it I used is from that movie, and I really loved the way it looked crawling over him, the dark shadowed face. It was really dramatic, and I really liked the idea for this. I liked the creepy kind of Halloween vibe it had to it as well. And so I just went over it with some basic gray, and I kept overlaying it with a bit darker and darker till I got to black. So that way the base would look a bit darker, because as you can see, the marker stripes back and forth. And I really want to go in with my fine detail pens and to get as much depth and dimension without being super realistic with every tiny little crinkle, line, and hair that I could, and just make it feel stuck, have that real feeling of stuck. And so I just kept going over certain parts over and over again, trying to add a little bit of dimension and depth each time that I went over it. I really love how this one came out. I went in with the darks first and then went over with the lights a bit later, and then I went and did the tiny little stretched over bits that were pulling and stretching and crawling over his face and added it in. just so you could get more of the effect of like the webby kind of look that he has, and the little pieces hanging off him and like just crawling straight onto him. It's bonding to him. The symbiosis is happening. Venom has also always been one of my favorite characters for like anti-hero, villain. I love the whole thing. Yes, I've seen the new Venom movie. I will not spoil it, but I did like it very much. So here I'm going back in and adding even more detail and like shine and stretches and rips and tears, all with the white gel pen. And whew, that one took a long time. This next one was roof. The prompt was roof. And I had originally wanted to draw Spider-Man sitting on a rooftop because Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, favorite character, fictional character, favorite anything. Spider-Man is my whole reason for loving comics and superheroes in the first place. He'll always be my favorite. But I really didn't feel like going in and doing all the details and shading and the whole bit of like New York in the background. So I went for something that's a bit easier in approach. I say that, but when trying to draw it, it was harder than I thought, but I just had to go with it at this point. It was very late and I wanted to make sure I got this one done. And I did Daredevil standing at the edge of a roof on a building in New York City. I also very much love Daredevil. I've met Charlie Cox, who played Daredevil in the Netflix adaptation of Daredevil. He's a very sweet person, and so I thought, hey, let's do him, especially because you know how a lot of people dress up as like a little devil for Halloween. I know not everything has to be Halloween themed, but considering that it's Inktober, October, the month of Halloween, costumes and everything, I think this really suits that kind of idea, and I like to play on it when I can, and so I just went over it and tried to do my best. I did have a reference, so the shading, I did do my best to go over it. I didn't have different shades of red, so I just did it all in gray and did my best to make it work. I do wish there were certain details that I could fix, but that's the thing with Inktober. Unless I want to start all over again, which I didn't have time for, I just went on with it and tried to do my best. You can hate art the entire process of doing it, and at the end, sometimes things that you didn't think would worked out better than you could have hoped for. So trust the process, people. Trust the process. Here I am going back in, adding a little bit of white details so you could see where certain parts of him were. I really like the whole shadowed look, him overlooking the city at night. So I did my best to use my drying up markers. As you can see, they made some nice scrubby looking clouds, and I just did my best to leave certain spots so I could fill it in with different grays, and just kept playing with it until I got it the way I wanted it to. And moving on, the last prompt, tick. I've seen some people do this one as like a like the bug. I've seen a lot of people do like a tick-tock, like the app, or tick, like a clock, and I thought that maybe a clock would be better, but I didn't want to draw just a clock, especially since one of the prompts was watch, and I didn't draw a watch. I drew a videotape, but nonetheless, I thought to make it a little bit more unique, I went with the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland holding the pocket watch. And I did it more in my style, which is kind of, I'm not quite sure how to describe it. It's a little bit more cutesy, but also a little graphic novel-ish. It's more my style, because honestly, my style kind of falls between somewhat Disney inspired, somewhat graphic novel, comic book inspired, but I play around with whatever style I can, but this is naturally how I draw. And I thought he looked so cute and dapper in his little coat and his little bow tie and his button-up shirt. And I added the tiny little glasses, and I just like going back and forth with it, adding a little bit of shading here, a little bit of shading there. I didn't need it to look fully fleshed out. I kind of like the little tiny looks of marks making, like little ticks and little hatching I did on it, just to keep him a little more interesting, more illustrated look to him, kind of like you would see in the children's books. And yeah, I just kept going over it, adding little bits of details where I could. I really like this one because it's simple to the point, but still has more than just a clock, you know? Always trying to keep things a little bit more interesting if I can. So, yep, I just went over it and over it with different shades of gray, got everything done that I wanted to do, and some marks making. There we go. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, to subscribe for more content like this, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Alright, bye guys!